See, I ruined my thing. All right, y'all. We're here. Dat NBA Life. Is this episode 10 already?
Yeah, man, 10.
Episode 10, Saturday, midday, morning. Midday for me means morning, man. I got my Starbucks and shit. I'm a night owl. I don't see many mornings, and I'm blessed with my lifestyle right now. James is up at you're up at 5 in the morning running sprints.
Yeah,
thinking
man,
of somebody.
Well, it's crazy. My wife wakes up real early, so she naturally gets me up, and I got to take the dog out, and I got to be to work by usually 1 or 2. So I got to get stuff done during the day. So yeah, I try and get up, but yeah, I'm going to bed a little bit earlier than I used to these days.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I have good energy in the morning. Maybe it's just the coffee, but I definitely don't rise till about 10. But anyway, let's get into this. Before we get into this Kevin Durant debacle, because this is what I have to talk about it, man. It's been on my mind. But one thing that's kind of bothered me is this man, Shannon Sharpe. I turn on, I don't know if I turn on, what is it, Undisputed or something? Mm-hmm. How in the world does this man have on Whoopi Goldberg glasses? like those are he is a nice silk weave away from being in the next Medea, right? Just a horse face, big shouldered bitch, right? Like what?
All he needs is a wig. Or
yeah.
Some lipstick.
What in the fuck? And then so I thought the producers and Skip were just gonna exit. Like no, Shannon, the shit's it's too much. And I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to hide, the Mr. Ed features that he has. But then I turn it on the next whenever, and I see it, and he's got the cheetahs print ones. He had the cheetah print rings.
Oh, heck no. The animal prints?
Yeah, like something you'd see in a middle-aged black lady's leggings or maybe on her bedspread.
Yes, bro.
And he's rocking them on his face on Fox Sports, man.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's definitely a culturally specific thing. Sometimes the cheetah print and the leopard print, you can definitely tell a lot of the houses in the hood, that's definitely a staple, almost like the wooden fork and spoon.
Or the plastic on the couch, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
For sure.
You sit there on Sundays. It's
just... But yeah, I had to get at Shannon, man. I had to get at Shannon because, he's but skill. That big bad man. Anyway, then Cleveland and it's just too much, bro. It's too much, man. And I respect the grind and at the level that they're at, but it gets too theatrical to me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So
it's hilarious.
So man, and clearly Kevin Durant is not a friend of any of these blog boys.
Yeah, he said it almost like people use other terms. He made it real derogatory because it's almost like the people who put the hard R on the N word, you really put that emphasis on there. It was like he really blog boys. Like he was really talking down. And it seemed unfortunate because he just said it so many times. Someone was saying that the over under on the term blog boy was 12.
It was at least 15 times. Mm-hmm. And I want to start off by saying, I don't want to come off salty. Those of you that have watched my channel and watched how I break down video, I agree with him to an extent of, you guys know me, I'm an eye test guy. I do not speak about games that I do not watch. Yeah. I simply don't do it. Okay. I'm not like some of these other YouTubers where, they just put out random highlights and no, right? If I haven't seen the entirety of the game, I'm not going to speak on it. So I didn't feel a type of way about that. I didn't feel like it was directly towards what I do. I feel like I'm against that mold. But at the same time, again, mentioning it 15 times, 12 times.
Yes.
It's like, how when, let's say you've maybe tried to make a joke with a coworker or something, right? And it didn't hit, it insulted them, but they, right? But they pretend that it's all good, right? No, right? But then they bring it up every other day. And you're like, right? Oh, okay. Clearly you're thinking about this and it really hurts you.
Hell yeah.
And so that's how it looked to me. It was night and day. It was night and day. If you go back and look at the interview last year and just his tone, and I think he's really, what he reminds me of? He reminds me of the kid in school who is afraid to answer right. They almost give the wrong answer in order to fit in with the cool kids.
Yeah, but everybody kind of knows you're not that ridiculous. This isn't you. You need to come on with the BS. We know you know it. We know you study. We know in your free time you're kind of nerdy. But that's cool. Yeah, you're right. It seems like he's definitely struggling from an identity crisis, and there's different contingencies and ways you can break that down, and we'll get into that. But I just had noticed how aggressive he was right off the bat, because you had recommended that I listen to it. And it seems like you invite a guest over and all of a sudden they have issues with the food or the accommodations. It seemed like that. Like, it seemed like he was invited to a place. He obviously agreed to go. Well, then he was being rude to the guest. It was a lot of transference. You can tell that he cares a bit too much in some ways, like you were discussing. So I don't know. I was kind of turned off just his tone. It was very jerkish, and I can appreciate he did have some very good points. He talked about how basketball is where you're supposed to get embarrassed. He felt that Twitter is ruining the game because everybody doesn't want to play defense, be under the cup, and get dunked on, because now you're Twitter fodder or Twitter fodder. So basically he was saying, yeah, I'm trying to rim protect this year. I don't mind. Basketball is about embarrassing people. And y'all know I don't hoop. But it's just that from that mentality of, I think basketball players like to embarrass people and football players like to dominate people. And obviously there's some crossover there, but embarrassment is definitely a big section of basketball, because if you're whack, what's the first thing that's going to happen to you? You're going to get embarrassed.
You're much more on an island. You can see the face, and it's much more personal into that matter, right? It's not as physical, obviously, but it's more face to face. You can speak.
Oh yeah,
you can
definitely.
see.
You knew
and,
exactly
football,
who did it to you.
It's a little different, but there were a couple of things. One where he was, and shout out my guy on Patreon, because I don't even think I was so kind of taken back by how kind of like rude he was. But my guy on Patreon mentioned, like, he was basically purposefully misinterpreting the questions.
Yeah, he's like, what do you mean? Or explain that more, throwing questions back.
And just completely misinterpreting, like Ronda Rousing the questions. Ronda's a mess. We're going to have to touch on that at some point too. But one thing I thought that was interesting was his handler, Rich, or his business partner, Rich, who sounds just like Jacoby from Jalen and Jacoby.
Yeah, they look similar too in a lot of ways.
Okay. I hadn't looked him up, but he sounded like that type of dude. I think he purposefully sat in on the pod to kind of guide KD. Whenever a question had the potential of going off the rails, if you pay attention, Rich kind of chimed in first to kind of guide KD, like, no, let's not touch on that. Let's not touch on that.
Set him up with some assists and some screens.
Right. Just like a publicist type of thing. And clearly KD was drunk. I think that hopefully that lessens kind of some of the assholeness. He really started, he was almost slurring towards the end of the part two. It was, I mean, he's got to be 240 pounds. So
sure.
2-3 glasses of wine, hold your liquor, youngster. You think you ain't that nah. But you know what I'm saying? But there was that. And then one thing that I thought was really, really funny was, there was a part where Bill Simmons asks him, who is the most fun at Steph's birthday party? And like everybody's heard, Clay's just the shit. Like everybody loves Clay. Clay's just lit all the time. He's just like, what? And he told us a funny story about how Clay just didn't show up for practice one day and no one could get a hold of him. And then they finally found out, and they asked him what happened. He goes, well, I woke up and I was an hour late and I just said, fuck it. and then the next night he proceeded to drop 60.
Hell yeah.
So Clay being Clay, right? But then, so Clay was the funnest at the party, and then it was Mike Brown. He goes, Mike Brown. And then he goes,
the assistant. Mike Brown looks like he get
with
it
his
down.
little toddler bop, it looked like a heavy diaper toddler. You know when you put on music and a baby just shakes the diaper? That's what it looked like with his dance. But then he proceeds to say, if you catch this, he goes, Mike Brown, man, I love Mike Brown. He has the best job in the world. Yeah. And Bill immediately picks up on it. He goes, oh, what do you mean? He goes, oh, how so? What do you mean? And Rich kind of curbs it. And basically, essentially, KD was leaning towards saying, Mike, don't do shit.
Yeah.
Like that's how I interpreted it. He was basically and he caught himself and Rich caught him, but he basically was saying, yeah, Mike Brown just gets to show up and be a part of the Warriors and smile. And he's like, yes, sir, Steve. Yes, sir,
glossy.
Steve. I remember when he got pulled over on the way to the finals and he was like, they pulled me over and they took me out the car. And I was like, it was just like, dude, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But so I thought that was an interesting thing, man. And Here's the national media and the thing. Obviously, he attacked the blog boys over and over again. And again, I agree with him. Like he clearly doesn't like Nick Wright. I agree with him in the sense of the analytical argument is it has too much weight in today's media. In today's talking heads, everybody wants to come at you with the plus minus. And ESPN is the worst at creating I call them the LeBron stat, where it's essentially they're like, LeBron is the first player on March 31st to fart, hit a three, and make 4 free throws, right? You know, so and then they run it on the stat line.
Statistical.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, you know what I'm saying? So they're creating stats, so I understand that point. But you learn when you're in like 5th or 6th grade, right? You learn when you're playing the dozens on the playground. You know, you're getting dissed, you're insulting yo mama, whatever it is, right? The more you focus on the insult, the more you keep bringing it up, clearly that the more you care about it, the more it bothers you.
Yeah, and that can bring additional backlash because now people are going to continue to talk about that in the group afterwards. But yeah, you saw how he got so upset about that, and then you're going to be the victim of continuous ridicule. You know what I'm saying? You got to kind of play it off.
He's feeding the blog boys. He's feeding the trolls with it. And if you how you really would deal with it, Kevin, is don't bring it up again.
Exactly.
Don't mention it. It doesn't bother you. You're so happy. You play your Xbox. Don't bring it up again, man. That's my advice.
Yeah, he definitely seemed like he had a big chip on his shoulder, and it just kept coming out. It's almost like the girl that you broke up with a while back, and even though you've moved on, whenever conversation arises, you still bring it back to that person who had treated you wrong or did you this way, or that one boss or that one situation. We all do it in our own lives. And he's just doing it on a public forum. And that's tough because he had those situations where he was having 2 accounts and maybe had made some mistakes about how he was, you know, using it or whatever back in once they kind of crucified him for that, right? He had 2 accounts. He left
the Twitter burner, right? And and I love the relationship thing. That's the perfect example. We always go back working with kids and coaching in a school. I always use those analogies, but that's the perfect one. You have a new significant other.
Yes.
And they keep bringing up their ex.
Yes.
Right. It's a bad look. It's like, what are you clearly you still feel some type of way.
Hell yeah.
And he just keeps doing that.
And you know what's kind of funny? When you look at the correlation between depression and anger and anxiety and codependency, I've seen it in the field that people are basically angry first, then depressed second. They get tired of being angry, therefore they move to depression. So there's a strong contingency between anger and depression. So there's a point to this about how KD is acting in some ways. Or there's the opposite side, anxiety, where you're highly conscious of how others view you and your own perceptions of yourself. That's not going to breed depression or anger per se. It's going to breed codependency. So whenever you think about a relationship, you're actually going to feed those things that are overcoming you because you're codependent. You have to have that chip on your shoulder. And if you don't have it, you're stuck having to build your own identity off of your own tenets. And I think that Kevin is showing that he's struggling with that. That's almost like not only are you in a new relationship, they catch you, checking somebody else's Facebook or bringing up some old pictures or, reminiscing a bit too much about the times with that person. Your new significant other is going to be like, I saw the emails and you're just going to be, oh, no, I was just checking in. That's nothing to me. No, it isn't.
Right.
That's why you were looking, what I'm saying? So, I mean, he's enacting in ways where he's still writing Dear John letters to his haters for the most part.
Right. But here's and back to it. He's talking about like, why do you care? Or why are you focusing and don't analyze me? You can't see what's going on in my head and don't do that. And I know I'm guilty of the psychoanalogy and psychoanalysis and all that stuff, but because I love it, it's what I do. But at the same time, doesn't he need it because he's searching for it?
Yes.
Is it what you're saying? Right. You know what I'm saying? He's killing the blog boys. But what do you do every day when you go home?
Yes, sir.
You're searching for it. Yeah. So it goes hand in hand. One thing that we were talking about earlier when we just went and listened to it was that he sits in a very unique spot. Other than Steph, Clay, Harden, some of these guys, they become high school basketball stars, right? And then by the time they're in college, okay, they're starting to really get treated differently.
Yes.
Right? LeBron James, Kevin Durant, probably like a Dirk Nowitzki in Germany, but certain guys that are freaks right, of nature that you could tell they were going to be in the NBA probably when they were 9 or 10. I think you put them in a different category where they just don't have some of the normal life social skills.
Yes, sir. You're correct. We've done that whole section on what would they be like if they play like the mascot, and KD would be exactly what you're talking about. He'd be a medieval knight. He'd be the chosen Excalibur. He'd be the one kid that can hoist the sword from the stone. And when you look at the sword and the stone, the story, he had this brother that everybody praised and thought was the stuff, aka LeBron, and he lived in their shadows his whole life. But one day he was encouraged by this, there's always the secondary character. He was encouraged, like, he would notice weird things about himself. Whenever he was around, magical things would happen. So they told him, hey, go take this sword out of the stone. And his brother tried, his cousin tried, just like Cinderella, but with a sword. And he was able to hoist it out. And he had the infinite power of Excalibur and King Arthur and all that type of stuff. So it states that medieval knight was costly to become, because even a good war horse could cost the same as a small airplane back in those days. So he has the armor. He's a one-man wrecking machine whenever he's on top of everything, as we've seen throughout his whole career. But I think you're right. He's in a different category, because even from identity, imagine everybody thinks, yeah, if I was 7'3", I'd take over the world. I'd be this and that. But whenever you're developing and growing, I even think even being too tall or too attractive or being too musically skilled can make you awkward in some way. So you're right. Like, we look at him and think that he would be settled with himself by his accomplishments, but he's super tall. He's very athletic. Life just in general is different for him and LeBron because they got it so young.
Yeah. I don't think I think he's missing he skipped a lot of the steps.
Yes, sir.
To adulthood that even other star NBA players skipped, because, and again, that's like an elite category, a guy that was just a freak from 9-10 years old. You're like, oh, look at this kid. He's, you know what I mean? And so I think that plays into account of it. Now, I think that moving forward, I don't want to spin this all negatively, because I think with Steph out with the MCL and the Warriors banged up, like it could go one of two ways. This chip on his shoulder, this new anger, this aggression, he could lead us to a championship this year. Never mind Steph. What if this is the angry KD? This is like a changing of, when you go back and look at his career, it was like those OKC KD. He went to the Warriors, and then it kind of flipped, like Anakin turned to Darth Vader, and he harnessed all the powers of the dark side, and he just dominated these playoffs. So there's a part of me that thinks that may happen. But my favorite saying, there's a cost to everything. And at what cost is his? Obviously, clearly, he doesn't care about his reputation. We know he does. Yes. But his reputation may take a hit off the court. His off the court and personal issues, there may be a cost. And will it disrupt the team chemistry?
Now, that is something I noticed whenever he recently got ejected. It was highly unlikable, the fact that the play is still going. He stops everything that he's doing to go get into it with the ref. People are still playing basketball. I think he's becoming very selfish, unfortunately, with these ejections. Outside of it, it may help him, but you definitely hurt your team whenever you're not there to help out. And I think that after a while in the locker room, like you were saying, that one dude who you knew he was kind of banged up, but he's just not playing, and you went through the same type of injury and you're playing and trying to make it happen, you might look at him after a while. Even Draymond might be like, man, I've taken care of me getting ejected. I realize that it hurt the team. Right. I've tried to calm down. Right. So I can appreciate you getting mad and everything, but I really dislike the fact that the ball is still moving, people are still playing, and he goes to the ref and pretends like everything's about him. Like the ball was still moving.
It was ugly. It was ugly. And that's what I'm saying. If I think it's going to take one of two courses where is he going to harness it? Is it going to propel him and he can harness it in? But is there going to be an off the court chemistry issue? Again, he only signed, correct me if I'm wrong, because he's only on like a 1 year and then he has an option for another. He didn't sign like some big long contract. He's kind of doing it year to year. But I also think that Draymond, at least me personally, I give Draymond more of a pass because I think it's more genuine.
Sure.
I think that he's such an emotional person and player that he really does fly off the handle and he can't contain himself. KD, it's kind of more controlled. It's kind of like, all right, I'm going to go over to this ref and I'm going to tell him to fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And I think it's more controlled, so I give him less of a pass. But again, moving forward, we'll see if he can harness this. I don't want to hate. I want to conclude it like, You think like being Alchemy, my channel, being a diehard lifelong Warriors fan, I do not want this. I didn't want this for KD. I didn't want this interview to come. When I heard the interview was coming out, I was kind of like, uh-oh, because I just know that this has been building this towards it this year, and I was worried what he would say if he was going to give bulletin board material. But like I said, I don't, I still am in full support of Durant. Obviously, I want to win. I want to win it all, and I'm praying that he can kind of harness this and just be a nasty, aggressive, slim reaper, activate angry KD without disrupting the chemistry of this team.
Perfect. Yeah, he can do it. He can do it.
And one last thing too. I think he's 29, right? And we talked about him skipping the stages.
Sure.
Right. So I think he's like, I'll be 35 in November, but I think we're very far apart in years of the stages, right? And who, of course, he's a millionaire star basketball player, but I'm just saying his 29, maybe socially and emotionally, he may be more like 24.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it may take him some time to kind of figure it out, and because he claims this is the real KD, and he was the fake KD in OKC. But everybody that's known him kind of feels it's the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, next week we'll definitely break it down a little bit more too, because that goes to Erickson's stage of development. So we're kind of talking about stage 3, initiative versus guilt, stage 4, in industry versus inferiority, and stage 5, role confusion or identity. So what you are saying to some extent is that the function of initiative versus guilt, maybe he skipped some of those and now he's into that identity formation, and that's going to be maladaptive if you environment has pushed you to skip some steps, But yeah, I'm rooting for him. He's still excellent. Everything he said in the blog, or yeah, you got me saying blog, boys. Everything he said in the blog was nice. It's just it had this tinge of aggression. I didn't know
he was yeah. I didn't enjoy the personality, and I don't think that's the truth. It's funny though, because isn't he? It's ironic that it's usually someone, because you brought this up, how Steph is the golden boy, right? He's very nice, but deep down inside, he might be an asshole, kind of an asshole, right?
Yeah.
But KD's doing the opposite. I think you know what I'm saying? He really is a nice, sweet dude, and he's trying to be this asshole, and it just doesn't sit right.
Work. It
doesn't sit right, man. But what did you want? What did you wanted to get into today about
man? Okay, I love aggressive stuff and getting down, and it was cool to me to see that in this past week in the NBA, it got a little bit chippy on some fisticuffs, and basically you had some different matchups. Russ was pushed by a dude and looked kind of ill prepared to handle the smoke. Then you had another situation with LeBron elbowing Johnson, super intense. Kevin Love lost a tooth. Blake and Lonzo got into it. So it basically just had me thinking about how these matchups would actually go down. So first off, when you think about it, what had happened was somebody went over the back, and on the way down, they threw the guy down to the floor. And it makes me realize that as long as nobody hits the floor, I think people act cool. But as soon as somebody hits the deck, people get up real quick, trying to either, push and shove or posture. So anyways, Russ goes in and gives the guy like 3 stiff ones like this, just pushing. But he doesn't check his surroundings. He's highly unaware. And if it was a real fight and they wanted to hurt one another, he would have gotten uppercutted very aggressively. So I think that if Russ was a fighter, he'd be like Chung Lee, where she'd have the fast speed kicks. But if y'all play Street Fighter, you'll notice when she gets knocked out, it's the most gruesome out of any other character, because she just flies across the screen and lays there hella slept. So I think, and he wanted no parts of Dame either. Like I see Dame as like a Black Panther or a Deadpool type character, where he would just be strictly business. Because when you watch the footage, he holds the ball throughout the whole situation, and someone's just basically holding the back of his shirt. And I'm not calling him a dog. I'll never do that to a man. But it's almost like he had the ball in full control on some of this, looking directly at the smoke. And he just had someone kind of holding him this way. I got to give some props to Paul George. You can tell he's from Cali, right? Because the way he went through the crowd was different than everybody else. You notice this cat kind of like
head on a swivel,
head on a swivel. You know what I'm saying? Kind of more looking like, he wasn't trying to get it in, but might have been able to. So I noticed those two things. Russ was just highly unaware, and I'm glad that they were trying to preserve one another, because he really would have gotten the most. So he wanted no parts of Dame by any means. Didn't see Carmelo during the smoke. He was on the edges looking in, kind of peeping around, looking for the exit. in some ways. So it brings me up to the point, because I know you bounced for a while. The assistant coach's job is to run out there and to stop it, correct? Because both assistant coaches ran out there.
You can't, if you're on the bench and you're a player, you can't get onto the floor. Okay. It's a suspension. Remember the Suns Spurs rule years ago in the playoffs that cost the Suns possibly a championship. So yeah, they're supposed to come in restrain, and there's always the hold me back thing of, and you know, I think that part of the body language that it may be deceiving with some of these things is they feel safe, right? They're never really in danger. I'll never forget. Maybe I can find the GIF clip of it, but I remember what was the Tyler Hansborough. You remember the kid from North Carolina, number 50, one of the most physical. I liked him as a player, man. He was kind of like a Zaza type of just goony, more athletic than Zaza, but very physical, borderline dirty player. I think he was on the Raptors, and someone hammers him, or there's some sort of play where he gets hit. He doesn't know who it is, and he flips around like he's ready for smoke, and it's Ron.
Oh, yeah.
It's Ron. And he immediately is like, oh.
Yeah.
He's like immediately like, oh, Ron.
Exactly.
And everything changes. and why I bring that up is because I think there's very few players and moments in these altercations where guys actually feel like, oh, someone might do something. Yeah. Right? There's only a handful of guys where it's like, yo, this might go down. And so you see them with the Anderson Silva body language, like, you ain't gonna do shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I'm with you. But even you're right. Under those conditions, it definitely didn't go down. But yeah, I praise the restraint, because a funny thing, this is kind of left field, but unfortunately, when you think of the highest form of violence or fighting, people die. So death is the highest form of anger. And did you know that on my birthday, November 18th, 1982, and we all know it, but we don't pay attention to it. Just yesterday, there was a boxer who died in the ring as a function of getting a brain hemorrhage and nobody calling the fight. And that reminded me, there was a guy named Boom Boom Mancini, and they didn't stop this fight. And there's a really negative aftermath from it, because the person refereeing the fight killed himself. Their mother ended up drinking pesticide. It was this Korean guy named Cook Duk Sim or something like that. And he wrote on his mirror the day before the fight, by death or by knockout. And unfortunately, he called his own death. Damn. So I'm only bringing this up because, y'all know it's near my birthday. And just how I'm glad these guys have restraint, because when you think about anger management and all these things, I'm glad they're not really knocking each other out. So it made me think about hockey. Why is it that in their rule book, there's appropriate measures to fight? The expectation is to keep your helmet on, drop your gloves, and go at it, and then you both get 5 minutes to think. And I don't want to play the race card by any means, but, you know, I don't want to condone these people fighting either. But it's interesting to me in hockey that it's in the rule book that as long as you keep your helmet on and take the gloves off, you can kind of duke it out. And they figure it polices the sport. That's why they keep it in there. What do you think? That if you know people might be down for the smoke, it may limit other injuries. That's what they're saying. Right. Instead of some dude flying with a stick and stabbing
I think there's something to that. I think there's something to that because, it's one of those things where, and if you get in a fist fight, any fist fight that I got in my youth, high school was different. But let's say like grade school and down, middle school and down, you always were boys after. Sure. Right. It took the elephant out of the room or something. You know what I mean? It took that away. And then also I think that, if let's say that there was like, all right, power play, you have to fist fight with Draymond Green. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, dudes ain't going to be, they're not going to be willing to do some of these things that they're willing to do. So I think there's something to that. Obviously, you can't do that in basketball. There's no pads, but I'm just saying, I think there is something to, once it's done, and then they can play cleanly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying about Russ and Lillard. It'd be kind of like Lillard would be the older brother who beats his little brother's ass for getting mama upset and getting them in trouble. You know what I'm saying? I think,
hell yeah.
I think that Dame would just be like, man, why'd you get us in trouble again? Slap him up. And Russ would have to be like, I think because Russ didn't want to wash the dishes or something. You know what I'm saying? Stupid.
Dame to me is like the hetero Russ. Yeah. You know, Russ just has the mannerisms of Medea. And, Dame is like the more aggro, like, you know what I'm saying? I know really what time it is. But I will say this. I don't know. The playoff picture changes every day. If Portland and OKC, if we could get that matchup first round, that would be tremendous. That would be tremendous. I would lean towards Portland just doing them in. I think that just the cohesion, if those of you that saw, Thursday night, that last second shot from Westbrook against the Spurs, it was just so Russ. It was so Russ. Melo was 3 of 3 in the fourth quarter from 3. Hands up in the other side. Hey, Russ, plenty of time on the shot clock. And it wasn't even, and this is the difference. Dame, so there's differences in bad shots. Allen Iverson, Dame Lillard, even Steph Curry to an extent, when he does it, they take bad contested shots, but the difference is they're in rhythm. So
Yes.
what I mean by that is they've pre-decided, all right, I'm hitting this crossover behind the back, step back, and then I'm pulling it, regardless of the guy and how it closes out. Therefore, the percentage goes up because they knew that's what they wanted. Right? Westbrook, he squirts out these threes like a shark. Like he thought it was going to be a fart and it was some
like
shit.
Shot.
It was, I had to hit you with some doo-doo in this podcast, but it was like a almost like, oh, fuck it, I'm shooting it.
Yeah, right.
There was no rhythm.
This was
there was
running
no,
to the restroom.
Yeah, it was like a involuntary 3. It was like Tourette's. He has like Tourette's from the 3-point line, dude. And it's just fucking terrible, man. I've been saying it for years. One of my very first videos on YouTube was called Numbers Lie or something like that, and it was highlighting Westbrook, and even his assists are kind of faulty because they're always option B or C. They're never option A, and that's and I can go into that in further detail. I won't, but yeah. So I think that series would be very entertaining, and I think that we're going to see a tipping point with this OKC roster where Paul George and Melo right now, they're saying the right things. They're doing the right things. Because even Melo, after the missed 3, claps his hands. A fake ass like, that's okay, Russ. But when it's elimination time, I think they'll be singing a different tune.
Definitely. I like the way Paul George moves, by the way. He does an excellent job with that mid-range. I saw him the other day. He was at the 3-point line, head fakes, crosses over, scoots up a couple feet, hits that mid-range. It's always good to see that. So, yeah, I like the way he moves. It's very silky and with
no wasted motion.
Yeah, no wasted motion. Everything. Yeah, because you're right. It seems like he's not moving fast, but it's just he's only moved twice and he's covered a lot of space. So yeah, I've always been a big PG fan, and so yeah, that brings us to Lonzo and Blake. And I guess basically Blake was setting a screen, and Lonzo just got tired of the arms and all that. And Blake, like a punk, definitely got into it with the ref and said it wasn't me. It looked pretty clean. I think Lonzo didn't like the big dude all over him or whatever. But it makes me think about Magneto, or actually Juggernaut versus Cyclops. I think that Lonzo would be like Cyclops with the needing the visors in order to harness the energy, because without the glasses, Cyclops is basically ineffective. But the thing about Juggernaut is, although he's big and husky and all that type of stuff, if you can take his helmet off, he's very susceptible to mind games. So in that matchup, the way I see it ending is I think Lonzo would have like an awkward stance. He'd have a jab and move type deal. He'd be like a matador with a bull where you have to stick the pin in the back and dodge. I think he could do that. But I think Blake would have the front kick, knee to head elbow drop, some type of drunken frat boy style. I think he would just really be on some bro rage would be his type of characteristic. If y'all were playing these in like a fighting matchup, bro rage would be his finishing, but he would like chug a beer and like
right. Just what was the boxer? Is it the but I like that because so Lonzo needs his visor, which was created by LeVar. LeVar's made a visor that gives him that dilutes what he sees. Right. And then Blake, Warrior fans has seen Draymond peel the helmet off Juggernaut and see him shrivel.
Hell yeah.
Plenty of times.
And it's so weird to look because you see this big thing that just can't even move. Like he's basically, and another thing about Cyclops is he's considered to be one of the most boring characters in comic book lore because he was made as the antagonist for the most part. He was made after Vietnam to be a very square, upright dude. So that's kind of what we know about Lonzo. He's kind of bland, kind of boring. So it's kind of funny though. And then lastly, to wrap this up, you have Kevin Love versus Jordan Mickey. For some reason, I think Kevin Love would be very deceptive. He'd be like a Paul Bunyan type dude because he looks like the dude on the Brawny thing for our bounty, the things you wipe down your counters with. He looks like the lumberjack type dude, or one of the agents from the Matrix with the glasses, who's the big nerd, but they whoop a lot of ass. You wouldn't think so. So I think this fight would be basically a shirt over the head hockey uppercut from Love, checked by a spinning elbow cheat shot by Jordan Mickey. He's going to come with that Jack style with the metal arms because he just looks kind of crazy. And he's from where I'm from, Arlington, Texas. So it's pretty smooth. He went to a place called Grace Prep. We used to play them in high school. They whoop our ass. But yeah, he went to Grace Prep. And then LeBron finally, I don't know if y'all are Dragon Ball Z fans, but Krillin, if you investigate him, he's the one humanoid amongst these aliens. And he always gets his tail beat, but he has the most heart. Like, he never quits. And he's basically kind of like that cat with the missing teeth that you call. Because just the willingness to...
Tyler Johnson, you got slept the other day, right? Yeah. That boy was asleep.
That's what I'm saying. He laid on the ground hella hard because LeBron or Shonuff or Balrog, I think he's like Balrog. I could see him having the headbutt.
Or Sagat.
His large forehead.
Yeah. Just, who is the last boss in Street Fighter with the captain uniform on?
M. Bison. He was my favorite.
Yeah.
M. Bison, like just the cheap.
He had everything.
Yeah.
He was fast. He was strong.
Yeah.
Like he was
smart. Yeah.
It was all of it.
So I think that if you are going to fight LeBron, you're going to have to bring your A game. But as you know, just like in Mike Tyson Punch Out, Glass Joe or whatever it was knocked him out. You just got to do smack. You got to watch it, because didn't Tyson do some type of thing to the crowd? And then if you got him whenever he was distracted, you could just give him the business.
Right.
So if you time it, Tyler's not going to ever give up. And, he's not too concerned about his teeth and
right. You would definitely have to counter. You'd have to use his strength and his size against him. But
I don't even know if that's possible. Yeah, but yeah. So those are some of the fights this past week. I'm not condoning violence by any means, but it is cool to see, along with the finesse and embarrassment with the basketball.
The dust ups.
Yeah, you feel me? So I enjoyed that this week.
I feel like Kevin Love might just like get carried away. He'd be the kid where once he got the dude on the ground, he would be like, and this is for, and he'd start, because he's really been the scapegoat for like so many of these issues where he would just go too far and they'd be like, that's enough, Kevin. And he'd just be dripping in the other fool's blood. I think Kevin Love might just whoop some ass, man, if he doesn't break his hands. You know what I'm saying? But, so, we've done this one segment where, I prepare something. It's kind of like a reactional segment, pop culture or whatever. And I found this one video here where it was just amazing to me.
What's your name?
Andrew.
Okay. Well,
Oh, no.
I want somebody to hold me and hold me to wash my hands.
Oh, no.
I think your mom's outside.
What? This is...
Bro, that's mouthwash.
That is terrible.
I think your mom's
He's
outside.
about to open it up. What are you
Can you
doing?
just... Alright, yeah, that's fine. Can you shut the door behind you?
You just go walk.
Yeah. Thank you.
What the hell is this? Are you kidding me?
Yo, dude was
This
just...
is...
That's why I that was my pick of the week, man.
I don't even know what to say to this. Like,
so obviously you guys will see it here. I'll put it on the visual part of it. A kid, dude's just taking a dump in a public mall bathroom or something, and a kid peeps under, and he like introduces himself. And once at least the kid knows not to talk to strangers. He introduces himself, right? And once names have been exchanged, he feels like he has the green light to crawl under into the stall and kind of just check out what's going on.
that's so uncomfortable. That's so uncomfortable. Because you would think, how does he have this much time? Where are his parents? You know what I'm saying? Like, usually a dad brings their son in and, you help him or whatever. How has he snuck away in this small-ass bathroom to be up under the stall?
Well, and here's the other thing was, clearly this wasn't the first time he's done that. Like, that was very comfortable. It wasn't like he put some thought like,
Yeah.
is this okay? He was just like, hey, here I am. Like, he was like, oh, like, and it wasn't even shocking. So I'm under the impression that he does this when he goes into public restrooms. He kind of just wants to peep the scene. And then you just have to lock it. That really keyed me in to know, like, oh, he's done this.
Yeah.
Like, you got to lock it though.
Yeah, right. I'd be upset because me personally, I don't even like using public restrooms.
Oh,
I would
don't.
be highly pissed. Like, I'll wait. Like, there's nothing better than, and you're gonna think I'm nasty, but nothing better than being at work and nobody's there and you can go to the restroom or whatever it is. I get so pissed whenever someone else walks in. I know I shouldn't. But basically, there was this one time I was teaching at the school. Remember, I used to yell that nasty Subway? It was getting a little bit ugly. And I had to go to that Walgreens, the one that was right there.
Oh.
How come I was in dire need on some Friday? Oh, please help me. And basically, this dude, I didn't even see him because I was so focused on needing to go to the restroom. This homeless cat edges me out of the way for the one urinal or the one toilet, goes in there and just makes the most egregious sound. And he was I'm not making fun of him, but he was definitely homeless. And it just seemed like he needed the restroom much more than me. So I got boxed out of the freaking restroom because I'm walking in. Oh, yeah, good. Nobody's here. Then this enormous black dude with tattered jeans, real funky, needing to doo-doo, just kind of pushes me out of the way, sits down. And I'm still in need to go, so I just have to suck it up. And I was definitely not about to use it after this fool. So, yeah, I'm with you. How I would be so pissed if a kid or somebody came. I would. How do you?
I don't know, and I know that these past 2 episodes have had doo-doo stories. To me, I don't care. When I'm 80 years old, it's still funny.
Yeah,
but I will say this: I'm a home user. I don't unless it's an emergency. Obviously, I'll take a leak, but there's no sitting down going on without.
What do you think about going to basketball games or a baseball game?
Right.
It's terrible.
It's almost. I've been doing it for so long that it's just out of my mind. It's not even it's not even in consideration.
Sure.
And I eat pretty clean, so I don't usually have emergencies. Sure. But I will say at the school, the staff restroom, you'd walk the hall in the office.
My office
at lunch. Yeah, his office door was parallel to the staff bathroom. And what I would do is if I came down to wash up or whatever between hours, someone would blow it up. I would let everybody know. I'd go, oh, as I'd walking down the hall, hell no. Oh, man, come on, man. Oh, down the halls. And, you got the principal, assistant principal, the secretary, all their doors, and everybody can hear this. Oh, man, are you? Oh, and I would just let them know, let them hear about it.
Wasn't you, right? Because nobody's trying to. I can't. Hell no, I'm not about to be blamed for this. This wasn't me. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm with you. It's funny, man. So yeah, my office was right next to there. And our principal would eat weird stuff, and he would be in there pretty frequently, to be quite honest. And it was just
how it goes at schools, because there's always pastries and people trying to bake things and force you to eat like unidentified pastries. Hell no, man, that shit was a tragedy. But let's see where we're at right here with this. I think I don't know. I don't have much else to say. Joel Embiid, his fractural. I actually had that injury, a fractured orbital.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. When I was like 16, one of my closest friends, man, who's no longer with us, man, Adam. It's funny how things change when a female's around.
Yeah. Because
we were messing around and kind of roughhousing. We were at a park, and of course there was some girls around, some other girls, and so he wanted to seem tough, and he cracked me with a 40 bottle right here.
What the? That's too tough.
Yeah, it was too much. But I had my hands around his neck. You know what I'm saying? Like I had him dead to rights. But we were teenagers drinking. So and it was and he cracks me, and my shit just faded. To this day, there's still a you can feel like the chip in the orbital, and it busted open, and I didn't get stitches. And he took care of me. To his credit, after he immediately kind of like realized what he had done, and he was like, come here, let me see. Like, oh my God, he wanted to take me to the hospital and stuff like that. But we continued to party that night, and I just put a bandana around it. You know how it goes, right? Yes, and it ended up being a great night.
Yeah.
But the rest of the story was the next day. This was the day, the weekend that movie Jeepers Creepers opened.
Yeah.
And the next day, me and him, we were good. We were good right after it. We went and saw Jeepers Creepers in the theater. Now, what it did was it totally took away my peripheral vision out of my right side. And so I'm watching this movie, and that's one of those scarier movies of the last decade, in my opinion, the first one. And I had no peripheral vision, and the surround in the theater and shit, and I was kind of like, oh. It was like startling me. I was like traumatized from the blow. And so to see that movie, and I couldn't see like on my right, Jesus. And I was just like twitching and shit, and it was kind of traumatic, man. But I've had that injury, and it is painful. Obviously, it happened a different way, but apparently Embiid will only hope he'll be back in the first round, because the path for LeBron is slowly starting to clear.
Yeah.
Boston decimated.
Yes.
Now Embiid goes down. John Wall still not back. So I just hope that the Eastern Conference playoffs is competitive, man.
Yeah, no, me too. A couple things I wanted to go over too was about Nurkic. You definitely put me onto him a little bit ago, and his stat line for the past 3 games has been very impressive, at least to me, from what I can see. 21 points, averaging around 15 to 20 minutes per evening, 12, 10, and 8. Past couple games for rebounds, assists, decent level, getting some steals, some blocks. But I mean, 17, 21, and 12, that's contribution on a consistent basis for the past couple of games, and his field goal percentage is real nice. 8 out of 13, 10 out of 14, 5 out of 6. So in those past couple of games against the Thunder, Pelicans, and Grizzlies, Nurkic has been pretty consistent. And then McCollum with that 42-point game the other day, that was excellent.
Did you hear it? One of the notable things from the KD interview was they asked him who was the hardest to stick in the league, and he, without a blink in an eye, said CJ. Okay. He said CJ. He's just, and I understand it because we talk about rhythm. Mm-hmm. His rhythm, and he kind of looks like Urkel, right? He kind of looks like Julio White or whatever his name is. His rhythm for his step backs and his pulleys are very different. It's like an unorthodox fighter. You know how like there's the textbook, bap, 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 right? His timing of his moves are like, he like slows and jerks, and it's very hard to time and guess his rhythm, man. So he's a tough guard. But I will say the one thing about Nurkic is he's in a contract year. I do want to raise that I think he's one of those guys that you have to watch. If you give him $80 million, he may come out of shape. And
thank you for reminding me. Why does Raymond Felton look like a Nestle Crunch bar?
Oh.
This is, God, I don't understand.
He looks like Larry from UPS.
Like, right? Why is he so pedestrian?
But he's pretty, like,
he's very good.
That's what I'm saying. You know how skilled, I've said this before, you know how skilled you have to be that? He's like 5'10", 195 pounds with short arms.
Yes, and a rounded stomach.
Dude, he is so skilled, man.
Really
but
is.
Yeah,
he really is. But I was just looking at him and like, I don't know. So that's my strange comparison y'all always give me. But I think Raymond Felton, Nestle Crunch. I got to go with Popovich and Colonel Sanders. And only just because of the white beard, but just kind of funny, man. But yeah, no, McCollum, I could see how his shooting would be difficult at time.
It's the mid-range, right? But yeah, that irky jerky. So and that's the key. The thing with Portland is they're in third. They're between third and fourth seed. I think they're the third seed right now. There are others. Dame and CJ are going to give you 30 a night, essentially, depending on, they're just there. They can sustain this. But Al-Farouq Aminu is like kind of their Trevor Ariza or like a broke-ass Draymond Green. He does shoot it better, and he has some better physical attributes. But the thing is, they lost Mo Harkless to knee surgery. That's key. And then Nurkic is huge because if Nurkic can stay on the floor against smaller lineups when they're switching against a Houston, against the Golden State, and then punish those teams on the offensive end because he's 280. He has skills in the post, but it's the defensive end. When they playoffs, when they play a Houston or a Golden State, and they go small, can Nurkic stay on the floor is really going to weigh his value. Because in today's NBA, that's the question. Who can you defend? Can you stay on the floor in high pick and rolls? If you can, it doesn't matter how much of a beast you are offensively in the paint.
And then before we go, tell me a little bit about Corey Brewer. He interests me. Like he's
got crack speed,
like a spider monkey.
He's got crack speed, right?
Yeah.
So what's cool? What's very weird is he's been reunited with Billy Donovan. He won 2 national championships at Florida. That Florida team. You want to talk about paying college players? Joakim Noah, David Lee, Al Horford, Corey Brewer. I mean, you had like 6, and I'm probably leaving someone out. They had like 6 NBA first-round picks at Florida. At Florida, that's like Derrick Rose going to Memphis.
Sure.
It's very suspect. But Corey Brewer is an energy player. He's taller than you think. He's like 6'8". And he's just an energizer bunny that you bring off the bench. Now he's starting for Roberson because Roberson's out with the year. I like that pickup for OKC, and the reason he went there is because of his former college coach. But he is hit or miss from 3. He can go 0 of 5 or he can go 5 of 5. And he's a little overactive. So the way you would attack him is because of his speed and his length, he's very aggressive defensively. So you'd hit him backdoor, right? He's going to jump the passing lane. He's going to over-challenge the shot. So you kind of have to be patient when you attack a Corey Brewer.
Yeah, I was just interested in that. Thanks, man, because I'd heard how he was on the rise and performing better than last year, and I was just wondering what was up.
And it's weird because I think he's in his mid-30s. He's like our age. But he's one of those guys where he has that thin built where he doesn't slow down. He's very wiry, crack speed, I like to call it. But yeah, man, so that NBA Life episode 10. We appreciate y'all checking this out. Until next time, James and I, we're out.